absolutely nothing. And that's where effort is needed on your part. I ask that you please address this issue and do better for our kids. My child deserves better, and so do all of his classmates. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fryer. Next up is Allison Baser.
Hi, good evening. And should I have it out? First, I would like to say that we are very thankful for everything that the board does. We know that the job of a school board member is very time consuming, and it's also a thankless job. My husband's working out of state. He was supposed to fly in for this meeting, but due to weather, he's not able to be here. So having said that, I would like to discuss an issue that I'm sure the board has been made aware of, and I don't know if you know all of the details to it. Out of the respect for the Mokena School District, I won't use the teacher's name. However, my husband and I have zero respect for him at this point. Just a little bit of background. My son has an ongoing situation since 6th grade that Mr. Munch, social worker Ms. Toach, and the 8th grade team of teachers for my son and were well aware of prior to this incident that I'll be referring to. As a matter of fact, my son met with his teachers at the beginning of the year to discuss his situation and how he handles it. Since this incident occurred, Dr. Cohen has been made fully aware and updated about my son. I will not discuss the details of my son's personal situation out of respect for him. However, I would be more than happy to answer any questions the board may have in private. So about a month ago, the 8th grade team of teachers, Mr. Munch and Ms. Toach, had a meeting with Gaetano regarding his behavior. I was present via speakerphone. During this meeting, all of the teachers were very positive with their comments of the improvements they would like to see in my son, with the exception of one. This teacher's tonality and comments during this meeting were out of line. He told my son that lunch and being on the bus were not stressful situations, and he didn't believe that it was possible that his behavior or choices were related to that situation. He even had the audacity to bring up popularity into the conversation. It got to the point where I actually interrupted the teacher and told him that his tonality and comments were way out of line. That I could only imagine how my son was sitting in that meeting, sinking in his chair. I told him that he's not a therapist, he's not a social worker, and he's not qualified to give an opinion of what may or may not be stressful for anyone. As I continued to explain my son's situation to the teacher, my son told me that during this meeting, the teacher was rolling his eyes and flaring his hands in the air. I even told the teacher that I wasn't excusing my son's behavior. I was just trying to explain his mindset and how he deals with stressful and anxious situations. Again, I said I was not in the meeting, so I wasn't there to verify it. I asked the social worker, Ms. Toach, if she was aware of anything, and she said, unfortunately, she was there in body, but she couldn't comment because she was dealing with another issue on her computer and wasn't paying attention. After said meeting, my son went to her office to talk to me in private, where he cried for an extended period of time. I also made Ms. Toach and Mr. Munch aware of that. Over the next several weeks, there were several issues that Ms. Toach and Mr. Munch were made aware of. However, I'm not going to get into them tonight because of time constraints. Fast forward a few weeks. I asked Ms. Toach to let all of my son's teachers know that even though my son may appear to be fine, he is struggling. The very next day after she had a conversation with her teachers, said teacher showed a video, Country Death Song by Violent Femmes. Although my husband and I will never be able to prove it, we believe that this teacher showed this video deliberately to upset our son. This video is very dark, has weapons, shows a father talking about murdering his family, descriptively murdering his daughter, and then finally killing himself by hanging. The lyrics are terrible. The teacher knew full well of the contents of this video and that it shouldn't be shown in class. As a matter of fact, he told his class that he didn't think he should be showing it, but chose to show it anyway. At the end of the video, he told his class, "I'm not showing this to any other classes." Why my son's class? As a result of this situation, my son was incredibly upset and could not go back to that classroom. I asked for the teacher to be replaced for that first period, which I was told couldn't happen. So he had to move not only that class, but another class. Another huge upset in his life. Approximately 1 week after this video, the teacher who showed videos every Friday, they were called Friday Fun Videos, told his class, "Due to a parent complaint, I can no longer show Fun Friday videos." This statement, according to Mr. Munch, was approved by the administration. As a result of that comment, my son was bombarded with students accusing him of ruining their Friday Fun videos. My son continued to deny that it was him that had this parent complaint. Another student began receiving harassment about it being them. This was devastating for my son because he blamed himself for somebody else having to be aggravated and deal with the situation. That day, he ended up in Mrs. Toch's office alone, where he sent me an extremely upsetting text message that Dr. Cohen is aware of, and then calling me to please come and pick him up. Again, there is no way that I can prove the intentions of this teacher for showing this video only to my son's class. We do feel that any teacher, especially a seasoned teacher, should have known better. It's simple common sense. Any act of violence is not tolerated on school grounds. So why would a 5-minute and 6-second video full of murder and suicide be acceptable choice for a Friday Fun video? In conclusion, we want the board to know that this teacher has caused irreparable, life-changing harm to my son. There is nothing this board can do or say that will ever be able to make my son whole again. His life is changed again. Everything he thought had put behind him from 3 years ago. Every day he's dealing with the effects of the inexcusable actions of said teacher. We only hope that you, the board, take this matter very seriously when considering the consequences that this teacher should have to face. Because from where my son sits, this teacher's living life is normal, and my son's life, Dr. Cohen and Ms. Toch are very aware of his situation. I have copies of the lyrics of the song. Highlighted some of the most detrimental of the lyrics. I don't have one for everybody. Again, it's just simply appalling that this was even chosen to be shown, knowing my son's situation. So thank you again for your time. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Fazer. Okay, next up, MTA.
Good evening. Happy belated Illinois School Board Association Day. I think I saw that on the website. First, I would like to thank all of our teachers who worked hard to prepare for our recent parent-teacher conferences that were both held virtually and in person this year. I would also like to thank Kathy Arduino for all her time and effort organizing the Veterans Day Assembly, Steve Hippelhauser for providing the media support, and Victoria Clifford for preparing and rehearsing the music with all of the gray bubbles, as well as making sure the show went off without a hitch. I now want to welcome our second grade team, as well as our resource teachers from our special education department. If you walk down the second grade hallway, you will be greeted by works of art that our second graders created. But don't be fooled. Underneath those works are turkeys who are who are looking to be saved for the upcoming Thanksgiving holiday. Within the second grade classrooms, our Second Step program is in full swing to support all the students with their social emotional learning. The second graders are currently working hard on building their addition and subtraction skills by practicing different strategies to regroup. And throughout the year, the second grade teachers are masters at teaching their students to take the skills of decoding and number sense that they learned in the earlier grades and transferring those skills to reading and math comprehension tasks. Now take all of those skills I just mentioned that need to be attained by these students and add the skills of modifying, adapting, and accommodating within these lessons. And there you have what our amazing resource teachers do on a daily basis. These teachers meet the needs of their diverse learners by creating an individualized plan for them and addressing their specific needs in the areas of academics, functional skills, communication, and social emotional skills. They continually assess their students in these areas, often teach numerous grade levels within their classrooms, manage the paraprofessional support within their classrooms, and continually let their students know that they are there to support them so that they succeed. So thank you to our second grade and resource teachers who are here tonight.
Heather, MCSA. MEF. PTA. No. Okay. So do we know the Veterans Day Assembly update?
Hello. All right. So when Kathy and I were talking on Friday with the Veterans Day Assembly, we thought it'd be nice if I came and gave you guys a little recap of what we did. This is the first in-person assembly since we did start the pandemic. So since 2019, we were able to welcome 39 veterans and their guests to both assemblies. So in the morning and in the afternoon. 14 of those vets also came to both assemblies. So they had someone that was in either pre-K through first or second and third. We had about 40 veterans that were not able to come. So Lions Club donated flags for us and my class lined the walkway. And that represented our veterans that had passed or those who couldn't come with us on Friday. Mr. Hippelhauser put together an amazing slideshow for me, like every year, which was fantastic. Students from MES and MIS donated self-care items and snacks for the Veterans Home down in Manteno, and I will be driving that out to them this weekend, along with some cards that we have. In addition to donating the items, student council members helped with a pencil sale. I started off with selling 464. I was notified on Thursday, so only a day and a half of the sale, that I completely ran out. So I quickly ordered another 200, which I ran out again. So then I ordered 200, and we are still going strong. So right now we have made $538.94 selling those pencils. And that money is going to actually go to Operation Education, which I am a part of. Our team creates lesson plans, to educate our youth about the military. And so some of those lesson plans were actually used in our MES gym classes. The students learned how to survive being in the Coast Guard. So they had to survive through the water and cross the water. And they learned to match up ships with being in the Navy. So Mr. H did a fantastic job with that. So that was fantastic. And let's see what else. And I just want to say thank you for letting me do this every year. So thank you.
Thanks for that update. Next up is Board of Education.
Mr. President, I would just like to follow up on my attendance at the Green Rivers Division meeting. I had the privilege of attending on November 27th. This was a particularly interesting meeting because we had an update on the IASB from Dr. Thomas Bertrand, who has announced his retirement as executive director of IASB. And during his presentation, he highlighted the need for all the boards to look at their onboarding plans following the election on the first Tuesday of April in 2023. He reminded everybody that individuals are elected to serve on a board, and the school board must do everything possible to onboard the new members. Remembering the board's chief mission, 7 individuals speaking, working, and determining all facts of today and tomorrow of the district as one entity. And as I think about my onboarding and realizing that I couldn't walk into the junior high and demand to see the principal, or I couldn't run into the district office and demand to meet with Dr. Shaw. Everything has to go through the superintendent. And once I learned that lesson, I think I settled into being a relatively decent school board member. Additionally, at each meeting, what they would do is they would have a district present things that they're doing in that district to help make the board stronger, or help make their community stronger, or help the teachers, or whatever the option. And this meeting, our division representative from the IESB opted to have 6 presentations. And they were all very well done. They were all timed. Each one was 5 minutes. And then at the end of the 5 minutes, we had a panel question and answer period. And I documented in my note the district that presented. And the one thing that I think we should follow up on was the school district in Morris. And Dr. Shannon Duda, one of the things that they do is they take their strategic plan, their 5-year plan, and each month they take a facet of that plan, and depending on what that facet is, they have a presentation, and they invite everyone in the community to come. And so everybody is aware of what's going on in the school district, and they don't drive by and say, oh, gee, I wonder how everything is MIS is doing today, or MES, or it's a junior high. So that presentation, all we have to do is reach out to Dr. Duda and get a detailed documentation as to what they do and how they do it. And one of the things they learned in these presentations that they made is the people from the community love to eat. So he highlighted that, make sure you have a snack so everybody can share. But the best part of the night was I had the privilege of sitting with a gentleman by the name of Dan DiCaprio. And Mr. DiCaprio, his whole career was in education. He was a coach at many levels. He went from high school to college, and he spent many years as a scout for the Cubs. And as a matter of fact, if you happen to meet him, he wears the ring of the World Series because he was on the staff during the World Series. But they do something similar down there with the budget. And they, when they have their budget hearings, etc., they make sure that everybody in the community is invited. And this year, they had kind of an unusual challenge where the district found that they had a shortfall in their budget to upgrade their security in the sum of $280,000. And after the presentation, a few days later, the president of the school board down in Manhattan got a call and said, don't worry about the $280,000. I'll take care of it. So they got an anonymous donation to meet the shortfall of the budget. So it's a good lesson to say, sometimes we have to kind of toot our own horn. We don't have a community newspaper anymore, but we have to look at more and some exciting ways to share our story with the community. So I appreciate the board allowing me to attend. It was a great meeting and probably one of the best ever. Thank you.
Thanks for those comments. Anyone else? Okay, moving on. We have a couple presentations. First one is the tentative tax levy. Dr. Shaw.
Okay, tonight what we're going to review is the tentative tax levy for 2022. So tonight we're asking for approval on the tentative levy with the actual truth and taxation hearing held in December, the December board meeting for the final approval. So we're asking for the approval of the tentative. So we'll talk about the timeline. So we started the levy presentation in October with the levy presentation to the Finance Committee and then to the board. And tonight is the November tentative presentation for approval. And then there's some rules around the timeliness of when it's presented. We publish a truth and taxation, so it has to be no more than 14 and no less than 7 days from the December 21st truth and taxation hearing. The board approves it, and then we submit the levy request to the county clerk. So the levy that we're going to talk about approving generates funds, part of the funds for this school year and half of the 23-24 school year. We use the total for all the funds, bond and interest. We still have some bonds outstanding from the 2016 bonds that were issued for an HVAC project here at MES. The extension is the actual dollar amounts by the clerk's office. And truth and taxation, if we're above 5% from last year's total levy, we have to have a truth and taxation hearing, which this year is the first year that we've fallen within that category, which we will do next month. And then a balloon is requesting more than what you anticipate because the from the county assessor's office is an estimate at this time. So we ask for more than we anticipate because the EOD is an estimate. We actually get those numbers in March or April in the spring. So what we're taking a look at how we do the levy, crafting of the budget. So we're taking a look at the budget. What we do is say, okay, so this is the money that we have the expenses for our budget. And then the board policy has a 35 to 65% fund balance is what our goal is per the board policy. So in the last column, we take a look at, okay, in our ed fund, which is where most of our revenue and expenses happen, we're at 55%, which is right in the middle between 35 and 65. And in our own fund, in our own referendum money, the instructions for us as an operating is not to carry money in the referendum fund because that money is for the improvement. Warm, safe, and dry has been our mantra for the buildings. In the rest of the funds, we have bond and interest. We have a little higher fund balance in bond and interest. After we paid off the MJ building, we had money left in that account, and that was the account that we used to pay off MJ. Transportation, we've done some work on the transportation fund through the last several years to bring that transportation fund. Purposely had a lower levy as we recouped through the state reimbursement model. A few years ago, if you remember, we charged for transportation, so we changed that model to the reimbursement model. And it takes a few years for things to flow through and get to where they're nice and level. IMRF Social Security, we really levy for what we need. Working cash is a part of the levy that is kind of the district's savings account in case there's a catastrophic event that we need to have that money to use. Tort changed some rules through the State Board of Education a few years ago, so we use the tort fund less and less. And then life safety, we don't really use the life safety fund. Okay, so in our levy request, some of the goals were to keep a stable tax rate. So having a stable tax rate is one of the goals. So we try to keep a similar or same total tax rate.
The transportation, like I alluded to a minute ago, lowered by design. Stabilize IMRF so security, we levy for what we need. And then in the O&M fund for the referendum, we anticipate to have almost $2 million to use in our capital plan for this year. And then our bond and interest is stable. That rate every year, it's around $550,000 for the bond and interest payment for the 2016 bonds. So included for the board to take a look at our last few levies to be able to say, what did we do this year or the year before? And so those are just on the presentation if anybody from the board looked at them a little more in depth in the finance committee. And it always kind of one of the ones that has been across is maintaining a tax rate, because that's been important for the finance committee to maintain that tax rate. So we really try to achieve that goal. So it's 2021. There's 2020, again, with the top line being maintain a tax rate. So, and then the next one is going to be 2019. And then the same thing, keeping a tax rate. And the 2019 is when the community of Mokena passed the limiting rate referendum, and we kind of changed how that levy looked. So in levy 22, funds part of this year, about 49% of this school year and 51% of school year 23-24. This is what the certificate of tax levy looks like. The total levy at $19,351,000 does not include bond and interest. And the truth in taxation requirements, you can see by the time that we do all the calculations for the 19,351, it's 8.49% higher than last year's. And so that triggers a truth in taxation hearing. And this is the calculation to determine that. Here's a look at the extension trend data. So we can take a look at the total amount that we've levied for, the operating totals, and then the complete totals. Our EAD trend over time. So we know that in 2010, typically public entities take around 2 years behind public. So we had the recession of 2008. 2 years later, we started to see the impact in the public sector. And then, so we had 5 years of down assessed valuation. And then the last several years, it has steadily came back up. And still interesting is where we were at in 2021 for the total dollar amount was just barely above where we were in 2008, 13 years for that amount to get back to where it was. 13 years. Okay. And so here's the EAD. So you can see 2008, it was 628,000. Last year, it finally went above that. Our balloon levy. So here's a CPI history. So you can see CPI has been the 10-year average at 2.2. So there's been a lot of conversation about inflation and CPI. So right now, 2022, CPI is at 7. We operate under what's called a property tax extension limiting, PTEL. So even though CPI is at 7%, we are capped at 5%. So it is CPI or 5%, whichever is lower. So we're capped at 5% for CPI. So here's our tax rates. These are the tax rates for Mokena since 2008. In the last several years, you can see the goal has been a stable tax rate. So it's been across the top at 2.9, 2.8. And the orange is the ed fund. You can see a light purple. And then when the junior high was paid off, the community passed the limiting rate referendum. The light purple is smaller. And then the referendum money is in the dark brown. And that's the capital projects, capital O&M fund. Again, the stable tax rate at 2.8 to 2.9. When we compare our tax rate with Will County elementary districts with enrollment between 1,000 and 5,000, Mokena has the lowest tax rate amongst that group. And then with the Lincoln Way feeder districts, Manhattan, Summit Hill, Frankfort, New Lenox, Union, and Mokena had the lowest tax rate amongst that group also. tax rate comparison over time from 2008. You can see where Mokina is near the bottom, and the average is the thicker brown line. And then the estimated impact on a $300,000 house from the 2021 levy to the 2022 at CPI at 7%. If the value of the house, we are capped for our extension at 5%, but it doesn't change that your house may increase at CPI higher or lower. It's just very dependent upon the property. What the tax rate from 2.8596 to 2.8638, what that impact would be if your house went up by 7%. If you had no increase in the value of your house, if you had a 5% increase to your house, we use that as a number mirroring what our PTEL is. Or with our balloon levy at 11%, if the value of your house really went up, what impact that would have on a $300,000 house. Okay, any questions?
Shaw. Oh, okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that. Next presentation is the Illinois School Report Card data. That can be you, Dr. Cohen, or is it Dr. Johnson? Dr. Johnson's on the move. Okay.
Like I'm going to talk on this side. All right, good evening. I'm here this evening to present the Illinois School Report Card data involving our Illinois state assessments as well as our summative designations from this past spring. I first want to take a look at our state assessment data in the areas of the Illinois Assessment of Readiness in both ELA and math proficiency. I will also take a look with you this evening at growth on those assessments as it relates to math and ELA, as well as our Illinois Science Assessment data from this past spring. So we will start with the Illinois Assessment of Readiness, IAR. For those of you who are not familiar with the Illinois Assessment of Readiness, it is our state assessment that we are required to give to our students in 3rd through 8th grade. It assesses both ELA, English Language Arts, which is reading and writing, as well as mathematics. We are given data on several different levels. The first bigger picture level of data that we're given is specific to a student's overall proficiency, which is reported to us in a scale score, which is then broken down by levels of proficiency. And so each student is given their level of proficiency as it relates to their acquisition of the Illinois state standards for their grade level. Level 5 is the highest level students can receive, and that means they've exceeded expectations for grade level standards. Level 4 is the second highest that they can receive, which means they've met expectations for grade level standards. Level 3 means they're close, they're approaching. Level 2 is they're partially met, and then level 1 is the lowest level, which means they're not yet meeting any expectations with those grade level standards. And I did forget to mention levels 4 and 5 are what's reported to us as students who have met or exceeded or have met the benchmark for grade level standards according to this one assessment measure. In addition to that, then, once we get the big picture data, it's given to us in a little bit more broken down data where we're given information related to, they call them subclaims. So in math, we get information as it relates to major content or priority content of the grade level, supporting and additional content for the grade level. We get information regarding how students express their reasoning, and that's usually through written form. That specifically assesses the major content of the grade level. And then information we receive as well in terms of how students are able to use modeling and application to more real world situations. Again, where that brings in that major content of the grade level. In addition, for ELA, we get a little done information in 5 areas. So we get information as it relates to informational text, so our nonfiction, our literary text, which would be our fiction and our literature. We get information on vocabulary, written expression, and then language and conventions, which we know as grammar. An addition that the state has brought to us over the past few years, and I talked a lot about achievement and proficiency, the state also provides us information on how students are growing. So regardless of where they are with their achievement, another important layer, which the state does prioritize, which I'll get into a little bit later, is how each student is growing. So no matter where you are with your achievement, how is a student growing over time as they work through our school system? That is reported out to us in a student growth percentile. And that's calculated, this little visual kind of shows, it looks at all the students at the same grade level who started at the same place the year prior. And then it looks to see how those students then scored the following year. And then the least amount of growth, you'll be at a lower percentile for growth to the highest percentile with the highest amount of growth that you see. So let's go ahead and look at math first. This first visual is showing how our students have performed in the district from when Illinois Assessment of Readiness was first given. We do have data that we'll look at in a few slides that looks at when PARCC was given. It's a very similar assessment, so we can look at that historical perspective. But 2019 started the Illinois Assessment of Readiness. And so you can see how our students have performed since 2019. When you look at the code on the bottom, we pay close attention to the two shades of green for the percentage of students who have met or exceeded expectations in that particular content area. So overall, this past school year, 47% of our district students met or exceeded grade level expectations in math. And what was a bright spot for us is that our overall percentage of students meeting those expectations returned to what we were seeing pre-pandemic. So that was really good news for us to see that as a district as a whole, our achievement and our proficiency has come back to where we were prior to going out for COVID. So we hope just to continue that forward momentum as we move forward. This is a comparison of last spring's PINA data as it compares to the state average. It was exciting for us to see that we outperformed the state average, so our 47% of students compared to 26% at the state level. Looking at comparisons, Dr. Cohen did a nice analysis for us in looking at how our schools compare to other elementary schools in Will County, as well as other elementary schools in the state. And he provided some information in terms of our percentile rank in both of those places. So you can see that we performed at the top end of schools in Will County and the state, high 90s here for as far as how we perform compared to others in Will County, which I think is a big celebration for us. And this is a broken down graph that demonstrates how each grade level performed last spring. So this would have been last year's third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, and so forth. As you can see from this, our third and fourth grade students had the highest level of proficiency in mathematics this past year, and our fifth and sixth grade had the lowest measures of proficiency. This is a chart I was referencing earlier. We can take PARCC and I data together. It looks like a lot, but it's really trying to track the cohort of students. So we follow this particular chart by color. So we see how this group of students started here in third grade in 2015. How did they do as fourth graders, fifth graders, sixth graders, seventh graders, and so forth. This is helpful for us to see. Our hope is that as a school system, we're growing more students towards proficiency each year. So we take a close look at this to see, is that happening? Do we see more students reaching proficiency from fifth to sixth grade or sixth to seventh grade? Overall, we saw gains in proficiency in fourth, seventh, and eighth grade. And as you can see here, our bottom for proficiency, this was the highest we've ever been since we've been taking the PARCC and Illinois Assessment of Readiness as a district. As I mentioned earlier, so information regarding the subclaims or broken down data, broken into those four areas. This is the information that's given to us by grade level. I did try to highlight for us in green where each grade level's relative strength was, as well as where each grade level's relative area for growth would be. So grades 3 and 4 and 8, which happened to be some of our highest performing grade levels, their relative strength was in that major content. And then in terms of student growth, again, this is the average student growth percentile for our district. The average state growth percentile would be 50% because that's average. Our average growth percentile for the district was at 53%, so slightly above. But I did provide for you a breakdown as well in terms of where each grade level's average student growth percentile as well. Overall, our data showed that we were growing at a greater rate than the state of students, and highlighting specifically the growth in 8th grade was a strength of ours. So in terms of next steps, utilizing this piece of data, our building principals, our strategic planning group, our building leadership teams and teachers have identified some very specific next steps that they're taking within their buildings, continue to grow what we're doing in mathematics. In grades 5 through 8, we are implementing Eureka Math Squared, which is the second version of Eureka Math, which gives us a lot more technology tools in terms of pre-assessment and topic quizzes. We do have a focus at MIS in the junior high on writing across the content areas, which includes mathematics. And we do have an MTSS committee that our strategic plan does outline that will begin meeting later this spring to really start looking at the procedures and the processes that we have in place as a district to address the needs of our mathematics learners who might need a little bit extra support. All right, ELA. Okay, so to start off the same way, this is a historical look at the district of our scores in ELA from 2019 to our most recent scores from this past spring. Overall, 41% of our students met or exceeded standards in ELA, but not like in math, we did not return to where we were in pre-pandemic levels. We were close, but we did not return to where we were prior to the pandemic. But good news, we did outperform the state average. So again, we were at 41%. The state was at 30% of students meeting or exceeding standards. Again, looking at how we're performing in relation to Will County schools and other schools in the state of Illinois, we were on the upper end, so above average, in terms of where our percentile rank fell for each of our schools. And this is just giving us a breakdown again by grade level. Our 4th and 8th grade had the highest proficiency for this past year. And our 5th and 6th grade had the lowest proficiency levels for the district. And again, looking at our cohort analysis, follow the colors diagonally to see how students are growing in that same cohort from year to year as they move through our school system. We did see the most proficiency gain from year to year from our 4th grade group, our 7th grade group, and our 8th grade group. And then our overall proficiency from last year remained the same. So as I mentioned earlier, we received a breakdown of this data as well into 5 different areas. The first 3 represent reading standards. The last 2 represent writing. Again, I've highlighted our relative strengths for each grade level in green and our relative areas for growth in red. As you can see in grade 3, our relative area for growth was more on the actual reading and comprehension side, where the majority of the rest of our grade levels, our areas for growth was writing. Again, looking at the growth side of things, we were slightly above our average student growth percentile, which was 52%, compared to the 50% at the state level. And you can see then how that breaks down into each grade level. Our greatest growth occurred in 8th grade. So as we think about next steps, we've identified through our strategic plan and our school improvement plans as ELA really being the area that we know we have the most growth to do as a district. And you'll see that reflected again in our strategic plan and our building school improvement plans. One of the things we have begun this year is implementation of our research-based foundational skills curriculum at K-5 to support the reading aspects of text. Our K-5 ELA committee is reviewing and piloting high-quality instructional materials to support in the instruction of comprehension, vocabulary, writing, and grammar, which they're piloting this year to be implemented as a district next year. Our 6th through 8th grade ELA department are revisiting their curriculum maps to refine and make sure that we're addressing all of the standards in the way that we need to for the rigor for our students. Our school improvement plans have each identified a goal to support ELA work. So here at MES, we're supporting work with fluency and foundational skills, and our work at MIS in the junior high is very specific to writing and writing across all the content areas. As we saw, that was an area for us to grow in grades 4 through 8. In addition, we also have year-long professional development happening in several schools based on the identified school improvement plans to support our teachers in instructional practices as well. All right, our science assessment. If you're not familiar with science assessment, it is the state science assessment that is given to students in 5th through 8th grade across the state of Illinois. The 5th grade assessment looks at the K-5 band of standards. The 8th grade assessment looks at the 6th through 8th grade band of standards for science. Each student is given an overall score proficiency level. For this particular assessment, there's 4 levels. Levels 3 and 4 represent students who've met grade level standards for science. Students are also given information regarding how it's performed in the 3 types of science: physical science, life science, and earth and space science. We have not been given that information at the school or district level, but students will receive that information in those 3 sciences, which is new for this year, and the individual student report. We're pleased with the growth that our district saw from 2 years ago to this past school year with the administration of the science assessment. This year as a district, we had 77% of students meet or exceed expectations in those 2 grade levels, which was a 17% gain from the year prior. And here's a comparison of how our district did in relation to the state average. That would be a 57% of our students meeting versus a state average of 51%. And again, how our students have performed at MIS and the junior high as it relates to Will County and the state of Illinois. I just want to highlight specifically the junior high both did great, but the junior high performed at the 96th percentile for Will County and the 97th percentile for the state. In terms of grade level proficiency for 5th through 8th grade, 8th grade had our highest proficiency for the district, but 5th grade was right there, and I'm really proud of those scores as well. And this is just 2 years of the revised science assessment we given it prior, but they asked us not to compare, but just to show the gains that we're even. I'm really proud to see that in both 5th and 8th grade. So as we think about next steps instructionally when it comes to science, our 6th through 8th grade teachers are continuing to deepen their implementation of their STC science curriculum. 6th grade will be embedding their final unit, which will complete the program next school year. Our kindergarten through 5th grade will continue with their current programming for the time being as we work through our ELA adoption. But one of the pieces to highlight that we have looked at in our curriculum adoption process is ensuring that the informational talks that are part of our ELA curriculum align to the topics of their grade level standards. So we're continuing to reinforce and support the content of the grade level through what we're reading in the ELA classrooms. All right, so how does this all come together for the summative designations that our districts receive? So every school in the state of Illinois receives a summative designation that includes multiple measures of school performance to determine what that designation looks like. It's based on the school's overall data in several different areas, which includes achievement as well as growth. I did want to point out, the state has provided that specifically on the Illinois School Report Card to be very cautious in comparing designations from years prior to this year because the accountability measures did change based on the pandemic and things like that. So we just want to exercise caution in comparing maybe where we were previously to where we are now. These are the indicators that make up a school's summative designation. We look at growth in ELA and math, which makes up 50% of the designation. So half of the designation is based on how students are growing. 15% of the designation is how students are achieving or those proficiency levels. 5% is how our students are doing in science, and another 5% of how our English language learners are performing towards their language learning goals. And then the other component, which makes up 25%, is looking at chronic absenteeism, as well as our climate survey. When all of that data comes together with the calculations that the state has, schools are given a designation out of one of these four areas. An exemplary district is a district that performs in the top 10% of schools in the state of Illinois with no underperforming subgroups. A commendable school district is a school district that is not in the top 10%, but has subgroups that are all performing. Targeted support school districts are school districts that have one or more subgroups that are not performing to the level that the state has set the bar for. So they receive targeted support to help support things that are happening in the schools to get those subgroups to proficiency. And then we have comprehensive support schools, and those are schools that perform in the lowest 5% of schools in the state of Illinois. Each of our three schools for this past school year received the designation of commendable, which means that our overall performance is not in the top 10% of all schools, but we do not have any underperforming subgroups. So our next steps using this information, data from this presentation has been reviewed ad nauseam, I would say, by our administrative team and our teachers to really help us drive what we're doing in our school improvement plans and our district strategic plan. Our building administrators have each met with me to review their summative designation data reports that the state of Illinois gives to us to really identify those specific areas of improvement within the school and within the subgroups of students within our schools. That includes both the academic indicators as well as the school success indicators like chronic absenteeism. And then with, the action steps that I've talked through this evening, our hope is that we're able to return to the pre-pandemic designations that our district has received in the past. And that is my summary and overview. Any questions?
Okay, thank you very much. Lots of data. Next up is superintendent report. Dr. Cohen.
I'd like to start by recognizing all of our teachers for the work that they do every day. The IR results that Dr. Johnson just presented are the result of their hard work. So thank you very much to everyone for, I know it's a grind to get ready for the state assessment, but thank you very much for all you do. I'd like to thank Kathy Arduino for her work in setting up the Veterans Day Assembly. This is my first time seeing it. I've been in the district now almost a little over 2 years. This is my third year and the first time I've had the opportunity to do it. And it was just very touching, very moving. So thank you for all you do for our veterans. It's an important lesson for our students to learn to be able to thank somebody else for their service and their sacrifice. We had our first coffee with the superintendent today. Very happy to have a group of parents come in today and learn a little bit more about our district. We have 2 more, and there'll be a form going out soon reminding folks to sign up for those remaining 2 dates. I want to thank the PTA and the foundation for all of their hard work in throwing the Fall Fling earlier this month. It was a great event, and we are very grateful for their contributions to our students in our district. I'd like to wish everyone a very happy and safe Thanksgiving. And I'd also like to take this opportunity to recognize our school board members for their service. Yesterday was School Board Member Appreciation Day. I do have hope I can come up here. Let me turn this on here. So a very sincere thank you to all of our board members. Thank you to our Meteor Broadcasting Club for putting that together from the junior high. Mr. Hipperhauser and his students for the mural up there on the wall. We need to put that screen back up so you can see the poster made by the students from Oak Canyon Intermediate School. We're deeply appreciative of your service. That concludes my report.
Any questions for Dr. Cohen? Very nice. Thank you. Dr. Johnson, you're up.
Provided summaries of the data that I just shared with you this evening. I provided an update for you on the professional learning that's taken place in the district this month, which I also included our own professional learning this upcoming weekend at the III conference. And I also provided you an update regarding where our K-5 ELA committee was in our piloting and curriculum adoption thus far. We did start piloting our first pilot program this week. So we are excited. The kids are excited. I received a picture today from one of the 5th grade teachers who's piloting. I guess today when she asked the kids to take out their books, they all held them up and were cheering because they were so excited to dive in. So we're off to a good start. So hopefully, that's a sign of good things to come with our curriculum adoption process for ELA. And I just want to echo the sentiments that you've heard this evening. Thank you for putting your trust in us to do what's best for our most precious resource in the community, our children and our students. It's a pleasure working with you and happy Board Appreciation Month.
Any questions for Dr. Johnson? No? Okay. Dr. Shaw. Nope. Sorry. Allison.
I want to highlight two groups of our special education staff. First, we celebrated World Occupational Therapy Day. We have two longtime Mokina residents working as our occupational therapists here in district, Ms. Trish Roberts and Mrs. Allie Martello. Trish Roberts has worked here a very long time. I know she's a very well-regarded member of the community as well. We're so grateful to have them here on our staff. They're very committed to our students and to the community. Not to be outshined by two of our fabulous resource teachers in the audience today. You guys came on the right day. National Special Education Day is December 2nd, 1975. I'm having a hard time. Last year I kind of got notified about all these specific days in special education outside of just Teacher Appreciation Day. So Lou and I are trying to celebrate all of them. But National Special Education Day is on December 2nd, and it commemorates the date that President Ford signed into law the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, which is the law that governs special education and requires school districts to provide an equitable education to students with disabilities. And here in Mokina, we have quite a talented, dedicated group of special education teachers. So I'm going to start with the ladies in the audience, if you could stand up. Thank you to Andrea Lackney and Valerie Stunsinski for being such awesome special educators. But I'd also like to thank Brianne Bosco, Carrie Bellatier, Christine Wilkinson, Melissa Martin, Sherry Stofa, Emily Presnack, Mallory Huddleston, Joyce Spala, Heather Green, Allison Amadio, Kelly Harrison, oh goodness, Natalie Pewfall. Why doesn't it scroll up in the next page? Oh, I can scroll down. I don't want to forget anyone. Carrie Ballantyne, Eric Rudder, and Ashley Wojciechowski. I said her name right, and I think I didn't forget anyone. But again, I want to thank all of our special educators here. We have a lot of really amazing things going on in the department. I really appreciate when our staff members come to me with ideas that they have for student learning that is authentic, that provides our children with literacy and math skills that can be applied in their lives. So I'm really excited to see that we have that growth going on here in our district. I would very pleased with that and look forward to seeing all the things that our staff continue to do now that we're back from COVID and we're on the ground and we're able to interact with each other on a more regular basis. And celebrating our special education teachers is a nice segue into my request for an additional special education teacher. I was notified by our staff here at MES towards the end of last year that they were concerned that class sizes were a little bit large. And the amount of students that we've had move in this year, in addition to the amount of students that we are in the process of evaluating and qualifying, is becoming a very large caseload. And so we do require an additional teacher here at MES to assist with that caseload at this time. Does anyone have any questions for me? And I'd also like to thank you. I know this is year number 5. It's really, Mokina is such a special community. I'm really happy to work here and to work for this Board of Education. So thank you for all that you do.
Any questions? Okay. Thank you, Ms. Cerrone. Dr. Shaw.
Thank you. Okay, you've heard a bit from me already tonight. So we've got a couple action items on the agenda tonight. The annual statement of fares and the contracts over 25,000. Those are annual approvals that are data and information straight out of our audit, which was presented last month. So that's part of the process that they have to have board approval prior to being published in the newspaper. So the ASA will be published the first week of December. And then there's an action item for an energy contract. So we've been gathering quotes from multiple different energy vendors. We have, I think, 6 or 7 of them right now. We're still waiting on 1 or 2 more. So those quotes, when they give them to us, have said these are good for 24 to 48 hours. So we have quotes. We've taken a look at a lot of vendors. There's still a couple that we're waiting for out there. So they've all also said now is a good time to lock in your rates. Our current contract expires in January. So as energy prices go up, as winter becomes, gets here, winter is coming. The price, the price will go up. So we're requesting that the board grant Dr. Cohen the authority to enter into an energy contract once we've analyzed all of those quotes. We don't have to issue an RFP for electricity. Just FYI on that. So those are the action items. We've got some information items. Winter projects, we're going to be doing some painting in the buildings over the winter, pending board approval next month. Our workers' comp information renewal is also included for approval for next month. We did see an increase in our workers' comp year over year, so that information is included for you also. And just next month, well, January, our finance committee, we've got January, February, and March are packed finance committees. In January, we've got the overview of Fund 20, the transportation fund, and student fees. In February, we've got Fund 21, where we actually delve into the limiting rate fund and then review the capital plan with the architects and our engineering firm. In March, we've got our 5-year financial projections. So we've got 3 really busy months in the finance committee coming up. And then we're also currently engaged in writing 2 maintenance grants, the 2022 maintenance grants. If you remember, we're using S3 project that we're doing right now. Then the 2023 maintenance grant through ISB we're writing to use with the unit vent projects here in the South area. Each of those maintenance grants are matching money from ISB for $50,000. And I'd just like to say thanks to Dave Rana out in the audience. He's done picked up with the logos. So we've done the mats last year. So each of the different buildings got logo mats and runners. And then he added garbage cans. So outside of each of the buildings, they've got a logo in their garbage cans, which looks really nice. And now the hand soap dispensers, they discontinued the ones, and he worked with Purell, and we have each of the hand soap dispensers in the different schools will have a logo on it. So those look really nice. Thank you, Dave. And also, like, if you get a chance to stop in MIS, it'll happen soon. The furniture's coming, but the team room at MIS, you see the pictures in there too. That looks really, really nice. And I guess I want to hop on the appreciation. I've been here this is my 6th year. So thank you for the trust to do that job, because I do all public and a lot of money that we levy for and collect and budget. And spend, and audit. Those are our three big things: the levy, the budget, and the audit. And it's very cyclical, so you see it. So thank you for allowing me to work here. It is a great community, and I said that in our coffee this morning with the superintendent, that it has been probably one of the most supportive communities that I've ever worked in. So thank you.
Questions for Dr. Shaw? Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Henson?
Hello, good evening. I have a small report tonight, just an extension of last month's report and one action item. In our investigation into our network, current network infrastructure, we're here. We are all Aruba, HP Aruba. Just be real quick here. They have a 5-year end of life policy on their equipment. At the end of this month, 36 of our 39 network switches will be in their final year of the end of life process, which means a year from now, there will be no more support for them. They will not release firmware or software. So if there's anything critical going on that could affect network switches, we will be in pretty bad shape with that. Those other 3 switches go into their last year of the end of life process in February. So shortly after that, the Wi-Fi access points are a little bit longer. We still a couple of years on that, but they are also in the end of life process. We leased all this current equipment in 2015. So I think they did pretty good run. The software ClearPass we use, it has a shorter end of life process. It's only a 2-year cycle instead of 5-year cycle, but they still are releasing updates, so that can still be updated for that. And I did include some maps for the E-rate. A few years ago, you used to have to follow where you put your equipment on the map for E-rate. I confirmed with our E-rate person that is no longer the case. So these maps are more just of a guideline. So we can assess the situation in the area for the Wi-Fi. And if we need to move an access point that we put on this map for E-rate, we can actually move it to a new area that may need better Wi-Fi. So we don't have to stick to those. The action item, the last major infrastructure upgrade was in 2015 at a cost of $500,000. The purchase was placed through a 5-year lease. We budgeted and plan to pay for the 2024 purchase next year. We would like the approval to order the equipment now due to the supply chain issues. The heavy equipment, the network switches are a 6 to 9 month lead time. Hopefully we can get those sooner rather than later. The SHI vendor who won the bid quote was at $329,740. E-rate covers $104,874. So Mokina will be responsible for no more than $224,866. Any questions on that?
Any questions? Nope.
Thank you guys for being my first board too.
I'm just pressing. I guess it's pressing talk. That's fine. So the main thing I always look at is what's the cost of getting something done. And when you're talking about 5-year lease, the only question I have is there an interest cost that comes along with that lease versus if we just cut a check?
Yeah, this the lease was the 2015 purchase. We are not leasing. We have it in the budget to full out pay for the equipment now, so there'll be no lease. So the $224,000 is all we pay.
Perfect, because that's what we tried to do when we started updating Chromebooks and that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
I'd rather keep our interest in-house as much as possible.
I agree.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Okay. Next up, we'll go with principal reports. Mrs. Chorley, you are the winner this month. You get to go first.
I'll go ahead. What's that?
We love hearing from you.
I had the great pleasure of going on a kindergarten field trip on Monday to the Oak Lawn Children's Museum. Going on field trips was not something I was able to do the first year and a half pre-pandemic that I was a principal in a normal time. So trying to go to more field trips. That's one of my goals and to just enjoy that with the students and to, learn about their curriculum and these real life experiences that are tied to their curriculum. So I had a really good time. And again, I have so much respect for our kindergarten teachers. It was good. I slept well that night. I want to say thank you also to Kathy Arduino for our Veterans Day Assembly. It was amazing. It was emotional. And I'm so grateful to Kathy for putting that on every year. Our dads are both vets, and they've come to get to know each other over the last couple of years. And so it's just something that I think we all look forward to. I know we all look forward to. So thank you. And a quick report out on our conference attendance. We had, I think it was 514 conferences were held here at MES, and we were at 98% attendance rate for families. So both virtual and in person. So we are really excited about that. Sent out a survey to the parents. Overall, everybody was really pleased with conferences. Got some good suggestions to consider for next year. But beyond that, it was a really good experience. And thank you to all of you as well. I love Mokina. This is a great community. We live in Homer Glen, and I often say to my husband, we really should have looked in Mokina. I don't know why we didn't. We really love it here. I really love it here and love working for this community. So thank you.
Questions for Mrs. Chorley? No? Okay. Mr. McAtee?
Couple I staked myself out in the cafeteria, so I was able to meet primarily virtual. The was all in person. It was just nice to see people. It's nice to go to camp again, and but it was nice to see personal contact again. And a lot of happy faces coming out. Very successful. Our graduation is coming up on December 13th. It is a Tuesday this year. We had to move it to a Tuesday because of a fifth grade field trip on that Thursday. So if you can make it, please join us. 9:00, an hour. Love to have as many of you there as possible. Our Rocket Runners are running the Gobbler Gauntlet this weekend. They had their practice 5K last week, and just more story. They all finished everybody did a great job. Last runner that was coming in was struggling a little bit, so we had 35 runners plus parents and siblings. And the last runner was a couple parents had Porsche with her, and the last. So we had 35 students lined up tunnel for her to run under and get to the finish line, and it was just very cool. They did it up, just trying to support their classmates. So it was very cool. So looking forward to hearing about the stories from the 5K this weekend. And then, I've been in education for 30 years, so I've worked with many different boards. Thank you. You give us the tools that we need. You give us the resources, and then you trust us to make all those great decisions for the kids. So thank you very much for what you guys do.
Okay, Dr. Rolanitis.
I just want to highlight a few things. First of all, do not do anything this Saturday afternoon at 5 o'clock. If you want to come out and freeze with us at the Festival of Lights Parade, I know some of you will be at a different Festival of Lights Parade downtown, but Mokina it's a fun one. It's the shortest parade ever. It starts here and ends at the bank down on Front Street, but there's a lot of people. It's a lot of people. Our band will be performing in that, so it'll be a fun thing. The holiday concert for the band is on the 20th. That was a change. Thank you, Bailey, about that. We had it was originally scheduled on the same night as the board meeting. So if you want to see me 2 nights in a row, you can see me on the 20th and the 21st for that activity. And then we are very happy to resume our end of the semester winter concert for the elementary schools. We'll be having on the last day on the 22nd in the morning. We'll have third grade, fourth and fifth grade come over, and I think we have fifth grade perform, don't we? I think so. We have fifth grade perform, and they performing for your peers is always something that's very different than performing for your parents. So the kids will be a little bit more nervous, but it's a lot of fun playing those holiday songs. And normally I run up and down the bleachers, but I don't think I'll be able to do that this year. I'm going to have Luke do that. So I'll pass that torch for now. We have the athletics this weekend is a big weekend. We host the Des Plaines Valley Conference 6th grade girls basketball tournament. A few years ago, we all decided that we would take one of the big events, and we picked 6th grade girls basketball, partially because we have two gyms and it's a little easier to run. But that'll be Friday and Saturday night. And if you've never seen exciting 6th grade girls basketball, this is the place to be. I'm telling you, intense. So I'll even let you in for free. And then the last thing, two more things. The last activity I want to point out is we also have a Veterans Day activity at the junior high. We had two things going on this year. We invite the ROTC program from Lincoln Way Central to come over, and they do a couple of flag ceremonies, and they do something called the hat ceremony or the POW-MIA ceremony. So they come over and they also get service for that, but it's a great ceremony for our kids to see. And then I want to give a shout out to my history department and Taylor Martin, who's their department chair, who organized for all the history classes throughout the day to have veterans come in and tell their story to the students. So all throughout the entire day, most of them are relatives of somebody who's in the junior high. They came in and they told their story of being a veteran. We had everything from people from Vietnam vets to we have a parent who is still active military, works in the area, who came and shared everything from what it was like when they were overseas to what kind of jobs they did. And I think the kids got a lot out of it. It's nice to put a face to that and see these are actual people who do this job. They're normal people just like you and me. And it's interesting to watch and you hear them. I mean, these people in my mind are heroes, and they did several of the people were active infantry, people on the front lines, people jumping out of airplanes and helicopters. And it was really exciting for the kids to see that. You know, it's not just Call of Duty, it's real. So good job for her. And then I'll be the last one in this group to say thank you to the board for all that you do. I know it's often a thankless job and you have to make decisions that sometimes are great, popular decisions. Other times they're not quite so popular that people don't understand. So I appreciate what you do and thank you. I've been here. This is 13 years for me. And I can't imagine working anywhere else. It's a fantastic place to be. Thank you.
Dr. Laurinaitis, any questions? No? Okay. Anna, you're up with Lincoln Way's Area Special Education.
Okay. Well, I did not attend my meeting last month because my daughter had a choir concert, but there was nothing too much going on over there. Financially, there was nothing significant to report on. And then approval-wise, we accepted another very generous gift of $900 from the Illinois State Council of Kankakee. And then we approved 8 intergovernmental agreements. And really, that's it. Short.
Any questions for Anna? Okay, FOIA requests. There were 3. I believe they were filled. Okay, next up, we will go to action requests. Kathy, you ready? Okay, we'll start with the approval of the previous minutes.
Move to approve minutes from the October 19, 2022 regular closed session meetings as presented.
Second by Lisa. Do we have any questions? Please call the vote.
Mr. Andreessen?
Yes.
Mrs. Briscoe?
Yes.
Mr. Bush?
Yes.
Mrs. Staley?
Yes.
Mr. Everett?
Yes.
Mrs. Zelinski?
Yes.
Okay, motion passed. District bills this month were Ms. Briscoe.
Jerry, thank you very much for my phone calls. That's, between my work schedule. I appreciate it and your time. but Dr. Shaw answered everything that I needed, and she went over things thoroughly with me. So thank you. So I move to approve the monthly bills as presented.
Second.
Second by Jamie. Any questions? Please call the vote.
Mrs. Briscoe,
Yes.
Mr. Bush,
Yes.
Mrs. Staley,
Yes.
Mr. Everett,
Yes.
Mrs. Zelinski,
Yes.
Mr. Andreessen.
Yes.
Okay, motion passed. Next up is personnel.
Mr. President, I move to approve personnel recommendations 6C 1 through 7 as presented, subject to successful background check if applicable.
Second.
Second by Jamie. Any questions? Please call the vote.
Mr. Bush,
Yes.
Mrs. Staley,
Yes.
Mr. Everett,
Yes.
Mrs. Zelinski,
Yes.
Mr. Andreessen,
Yes.
Mrs. Briscoe.
Yes.
Okay, motion passed. Next up is consent agenda.
I move to approve consent agenda items 6D 1 through 3 as presented.
Second.
Second, I heard Jim first. Any questions? Please call the vote.
Mrs. Staley,
Yes.
Mr. Everett,
Yes.
Mrs. Zelinski,
Yes.
Mr. Andreessen,
Yes.
Mrs. Briscoe,
Yes.
Mr. Bush.
Yes. Okay, motion passed. Next up is the tentative levy.
I move to approve the 2022 tentative tax levy as presented.
Second by Jim. Any questions? Please call the vote.
Mr. Everett,
Yes.
Mrs. Zelinski,
Yes.
Mr. Andreessen,
Yes.
Mrs. Briscoe,
Yes.
Mr. Bush,
Yes.
and Mrs. Staley.
Yes.
Okay, levy is passed. Next up is approval of the network infrastructure refresh that Lincoln pointed out.
Move to approve the district network infrastructure refresh, SHI, an amount not to exceed $224,866 as presented.
Second by Lisa. Any questions? Please call the vote.
I do have one question.
Oh, we have a question.
Is there any, with the interest rate, and CPI and all that stuff going on, is there any chance that that number may go up?
So I believe that is a contract, I want to say. With as soon as if it's approved, that is what we end up paying come July. So
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, please call the vote.
Mrs. Zelinski,
Yes.
Mr. Andreessen,
Yes.
Mrs. Briscoe, Mr. Bush,
Yes.
Mrs. Staley,
Yes.
Mr. Everett.
Yes.
Okay, motion passed. Congratulations, Lincoln. There you go. You get some new equipment. Yeah.
Congratulations, you got work to do.
Yes, yes.
That's job security, Lincoln.
Mhm.
Gotta love that.
Yes. Next up, energy contract.
I move to grant Dr. Cohen authority to enter into the energy contract on behalf of the board.
Second.
Second by Mike. I have to say this is a little odd that they only give us 24 to 48 hours, but it is what it is.
You haven't seen any. How much you use?
I'm seeing like our current contract is 3.5,
Okay.
so 3.5%.
Yeah.
What we see right now, we've got between 5.4 all the way up to 7. So we have quite a few of them in the 5.4, 5.5, 5.6, 5.7, and then it just goes up from there. Kind of what we're looking at our current provider, which is Next Year Energy. Then we look at Constellation because Constellation has the energy including Illinois. So those are kind of our benchmarks.
That's what the single biggest driver is CPI right now, is energy costs.
Right. So those are the two that we're looking at closely. And then if we see the other companies around those areas, thank you. Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, Kathy, please call the vote.
Mr. Andreessen, Mrs. Briscoe,
Yes.
Mr. Bush,
Yes.
Mrs. Staley,
Yes.
Mr. Everett,
Yes.
Mrs. Zelinski.
Okay, motion passed. Next up, items for the December 21st agenda. I think Dr. Shaw, you've already highlighted you had a few. Sure.
we'll have the winter projects approval from the board. We'll get the quotes for the winter projects. And then we'll have the workers' comp renewal. And then, of course, we'll have our truth and taxation hearing with the request to approve the tax levy.
Okay. I don't think there's anything for follow-up discussion for the good of Mokina.
President, one thing I should have brought up on the like I went through here. At the October 27th meeting. The October 27th meeting, I had a chance. The Three Rivers Division's resolutions chair. And spent we ate dinner together. So over an hour discussion, he asked politely that we go with the recommendation of the committee. So I therefore asked the votes to meet that criteria.
All right, that's good to know. If any board member has any objections to that, please let us know. Ahead of the meeting coming up, a couple days. Saturday, 10:30. Jim, did you have anything for good?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's nice that you guys are all saying nice things to us. The truth is, I get to have a little bit of fun in your success. I'm like this much in your success. You guys got all the talent in the world. We're trying to give you a whole lot of tools to make it happen. And whether you're doing the Veterans Day event and the Lions Club was able to help out with the flags, or other people were able to help out with refreshments, it's all just part of a bigger picture, which is trying to build a good experience for our kids and all the kids in this community. And you're all out here doing that. And I just think that's really the commendable thing. I don't think this is a thankless job. I think I get to be part of a bigger picture and help you guys succeed. And I love that. Kathy, when you're out there and you're putting all this stuff going on with Mr. Ippelhauser, this whole room was filled with veterans twice. And they were all here taking time out of their day. It was a beautiful thing. And I saw people in this room whose parents were in there helping out and wanting to be part of it, and kids who really didn't know what a vet was aside from somebody that helps their dog until they see everything else. And I mention that because someone told me that phrase exactly. And sometimes we need to remember all the fun people that really go out there and help us achieve everything we're able to achieve. So between everybody else that helped out with that day and the kids and everything else here, thank you for that. I'm glad I get to be a small part of your success. Thank you.
Well said, Mr. Andrews.
Anything else for the good of Mokina? All right, hearing none, I move that the Board of Education adjourn to closed session for purposes of personnel with no action after closed session. Second by Mr. Andreessen. Any questions? Please call the vote.
Mrs. Staley?
Yes.
Mrs. Briscoe? Mr. Andreessen?
Yes.
Mr. Bush?
Yes.
Mr. Everett?
Yes.
Mrs. Zelinski?
A motion passed. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night. Drive safe.
Thank you.
Okay, it is 8:37, so 8:47, 10 minutes.